Welcome to our February 7th edition of GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. Good show today. Brian Neubert will join us here. And then we'll have also Bobby Riddell and Dick Satterfield and Mike Steele on the back end. But Brian will get us up to date. A lot of you will not listen or watch this until after the Oregon game, but we are obviously recording before, so we'll hit that. But there's a lot to talk about with all of our guests today. We want to thank the Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro, Boiler House Prime, pretty good place to enjoy a cool. It's not as cold as it has been, but it's okay. Maybe it'll start to melt after a little bit of icy morning here in West Lafayette, but we appreciate all those folks for being sponsors of this GoldandBlack.com simulcast. So without further ado, we'll bring in Mr. Neubert and Brian. Obviously, the task at hand for Purdue is Oregon on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Mackey Arena. You've talked about it. You talked about Derek and written about Purdue's cathartic win over Maryland, the 30-point victory over the Terrapins, and the hopes, if you're a Purdue partisan, that this is the start of a run that can take them all the way into the NCAA tournament. Still feel that way 4 or 5 days later?
Yeah, I think that the Maryland game obviously has to be contextualized in the reality that Maryland is not very good.
Yeah.
But I thought that game coming off the 3-game losing streak was more about Purdue than it was the opponent. So had they played a better team, I still think that it was just important for Purdue to play well. And I think from a defensive perspective, you got a lot of proof of concept against Maryland. You got a glaring illustration of what you can do when you're connected, when you're prepared, when you're giving good effort, giving good energy, communicating, things like that. And if Purdue can just rediscover that, and where it went, I don't know. That still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it did slip for a couple of games, 2 of which, Purdue was in position to win. So it wasn't all bad. And the Indiana game was a really bad 10 minutes that it just couldn't dig its way out of. But I think if Purdue can just kind of rediscover that, re-embrace the importance of it, and maintain that through the rest of the season, I think it can be pretty good the rest of the way here. I still think they're a good team. I think these are long seasons. There are ups and downs here and there, and Purdue has to hope it got its down out of the way here.
Yeah, you just look at the Big Ten, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, look at what Purdue's schedule is going to be upcoming. Yes, they should get past Oregon. We'll see, but then Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State in the next 6 games. There's just no nights off. And at the top level, the top 4 or 5 teams, if you include Michigan State in that group, obviously, it's as good as it's been in a long time. And you've covered this league for a long time.
Yeah, I think the top of the Big Ten is really good. I think the bottom of the Big Ten is pretty bad when you look at how bad Maryland is, when you look at how the circumstances Oregon's facing right now. Penn State's obviously in a tough spot. Rutgers is in a tough spot. But I think the top of the Big Ten is really good. The middle's solid, as it always is. But I think Purdue it's just about Purdue at this point. It's Purdue's, standard shouldn't be to compare itself to the top of the Big Ten, to compare itself to the middle of the Big Ten, whatever. It should be about, here's how good Purdue can be when Purdue is good. That sounds like circular logic, but I think Purdue is a good enough team with enough experience and enough wisdom that it should just, this sounds obvious, but I think it's a real thing, is just be as good as you can be. Just be as connected as you can be. Just understand that from a defensive perspective, you can be good. Yeah. From a rebounding perspective, you can be good. And you have shown it, and that kind of stuff has to show up every single night. The offense will take care of itself if you do that kind of stuff. And but the backloaded Big Ten schedules nowadays, because of TV, obviously, are going to make February into March, pretty harrowing. And that's going to be true again for Purdue here. They're going to have to face the super team Michigan put together. They've already gotten Illinois out of the way. Illinois is the best team in the Big Ten right now. But I think that Purdue can still be right there. It would need some breaks, but Purdue can still play its way into a puncher's chance at sharing the Big Ten title here. It's going to need some breaks, but there's a lot of big games to be played here among people that don't involve Purdue. So there's still plenty to play for here. The goal, obviously, being to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year. And I think the Maryland game, even though it was against a road apple opponent, was a glimpse of what Purdue can be when it plays really well and what it needs to be from here on out if it wants to, not let that 3-game losing streak basically deep six its season.
Yeah, Purdue could win out, and they'll be in the conversation. I do think Saturday night's Illinois-Michigan State game, someone needs to beat Illinois, and Purdue's obviously lost its chance to do that in the regular season. Illinois has still a lot of good teams to play, but a lot of them at home, but they still have to go out west and all that kind of stuff. But I think your point's valid, especially with Purdue, that you just need to take care of yourself and worry about the rest. Not worry about the rest. Do you think one thing and is the whole notion that, when you rank preseason number one, all that, and all the attention that was on Purdue and all the attention was on to some extent on the 3-game losing streak, maybe on a national level or whatever, does Purdue benefit in your view from being somewhat off the national championship talk radar screen, even though that really is still I think I'm hearing you say still just, Purdue's still in that conversation. Nothing's changed. Is that any advantage for Purdue in your view? In fact, that you're not the darling of college basketball right now?
Well, I think that, Purdue, this group of personalities, this program largely has operated better when it's had to prove itself to people.
Yeah. Good point.
And I think that you're now in a situation where, you were preseason number one for whatever that was worth. You earned that, but it was still just cosmetic.
Yeah.
Now you lost a couple games in a row. You easily could have won all 3 of those games. I'm not saying that to sound myopic, but the reality is you were in position to win 2 of them late in the game, and the other one you just spaced out for 10 minutes and cost yourself. But I think Purdue, if it's, first of all, it shouldn't be reading what people say.
Yeah.
But it has to understand that now Purdue is in a position where it's no longer at the top of that heap in people's minds. That doesn't mean it's not going to go to Iowa and be their Super Bowl. They're not going to go to Nebraska and still be a big game, stuff like that. But they are in a position here where they have to earn their place again, insofar as it matters what people think of you. But nobody's going to be picking Purdue to win the national title the way some might have in the preseason. It's Houston's in the same boat. Like they were preseason number 2. I would have voted them number 1 over Purdue simply because Purdue didn't win anything last year, and Purdue lost to Houston in the NCAA tournament. So I would have voted Houston number 1. Not that this matters, but people voted Purdue number 1, and Houston's in the same boat. They've taken some losses. They lost to a Texas Tech team that Purdue beat by 30. Not that transitive property stuff ever really means anything in these conversations, but it's funny how things work out. You go from the top of the heap to kind of off the radar a little bit, and then if you're wired that way as a collective personality with your team, you have to understand, hey, we're not everybody's darling anymore. We need to, really pick this up. I don't think Purdue is the sort of collective personality team that ought to need that sort of jostling. I don't think that, Purdue's not naturally wired that way anyway, but it does put Purdue in a little bit of of a different paradigm toward this season. So we'll see what they make of it. It's up to them. It's just up to them. I still have no idea why, Purdue couldn't play together and get stops against Illinois at the end of the UCLA game. I don't know what happened in Indiana, but that's also not a new development for Purdue and Bloomington with this group. So they just, as I said before, they just need to understand that nothing's guaranteed to them anymore. There's still going to be a big game for everybody they play, but they're guaranteed nothing. And all of a sudden, this legacy season that felt like a coronation before the season, they still got to make something of this year. And they're not going to be guaranteed any hardware or any, to use a Tom Dienhart word, plaudits. Just because, hey, we've all been here 4 years. We've all had great careers. This is our birthright. They have to go earn it now, and they have to prove to people they're capable of earning it too.
Yeah, good point. And I think that's really true. And the court stormings, heck, the Michigan State, Minnesota beats Michigan State, and Michigan State's ranked 10th, and they storm the court. So who knows if Iowa beats Purdue next on Valentine's Day, you might see another one. But if you're a Purdue fan, you hope that doesn't happen. Okay, some news on Thursday. Oscar Clough, or at least a revelation that there might be in this wonderful world of the wild, wild west, or whatever term you want to use, of where college sports is and it's impacting eligibility. And that may be the biggest story of them all, just is how eligibility is going to work. Well, part of that story is junior college and what's going to be ruled in terms of, will that count? And will you be able to have another year of eligibility if you were played in junior college? That pertains to Oscar Clough. And you've made it very clear that this is nothing definite. Purdue's monitoring the situation. It does make for interesting conversation. But in a bigger picture, this eligibility thing is absolutely nuts and could continue to really wreak havoc with college baseball, college football, college basketball. The only sport that's got it figured out is college hockey, I think. But other than that, it's a mess.
Well, the only thing that comes to mind right off the bat is, like, as long as you're tethered to higher education, like, how can you tell people at what age they can go to college or how long they can be in college, things like that. Now, the NCAA has to figure out competitively how many years are we going to allow people to compete athletically. It's always been the 4-year deal, mirroring the traditional, college experience. But, they opened a can of worms with the COVID year, which I don't think anybody was asking for. They just did that as a cheap PR win because it felt like the right thing to do in a very difficult time for college sports and for college students and for the world. So, it was a noble thought, but it also created a world where all of a sudden 24 and 25-year-olds are dominating college sports. I shouldn't say dominating because they weren't all the best players, but it was hard to see a Big Ten basketball game without seeing multiple 6-year guys. And I think that it's sort of that, coupled with coaches and players during the NIL lawlessness for those 2 years, them being able to exist in a world where money is just being openly discussed in recruiting. This all changed the way everyone operated. Now it was about, how long can I stay in college? How much money can I make being a college athlete? Things like that. From a competitive perspective, coaches, as soon as the James Najee thing happened at Baylor, coaches all over the place went through that rule book with a fine-tooth comb, started looking for loopholes. And that brings us to Charles Bediako. And this all comes, months after Diego Pavia, sued the NCAA to get his junior college years to not count against his eligibility clock in the NCAA. that's the court hearing that's going to happen next week in Tennessee that could potentially affect JUCOs everywhere, including Oscar Clough. This has not been a thing for Purdue, where they were like, when Oscar Clough got here, they were not like, let's see if we can keep this guy around for 2 more years. But as this has approached, it kind of came into view a little bit, and now it's like, well, if this is going to be the deal,
why not?
We can see if Oscar Clough wants to do it, and he has not committed to wanting to do it. And still, there are going to be rules that are going to have to change here. I don't know if this next hearing can provide another just blanket injunction like the one Diego Pavia used to almost win Heisman this year. But that's a conceivable outcome, a 1-year injunction, or they could just throw the rule out, which I don't think anybody wants. And when you see the SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey, coming out and basically siding against Alabama in the Charles Bediako case, that tells me that the college leadership world, A, doesn't think this is going to change anything, and B, they don't want this. Because once you change this, you all of a sudden open things up to any number of different circumstances. As soon as the James Najee thing happened, every loophole imaginable, and this hasn't even gotten to football yet. Wait till it gets to football.
Yeah.
Every loophole imaginable was going to be explored, and they're not going to be done with this. You see guys coming back from the G League, that's getting normalized. You see a kid now, Amari Bailey, who's taking official visits to college basketball programs. He's actually played in NBA games. You have seen the last couple weeks and months NCAA officials, including Charlie Baker, just taking to their phones and writing stuff on their notes app. Is this like going to be admissible in court one day? Are we just crafting policies from the toilet? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And the one NCAA spokesman whose name I can't remember was Charlie Baker's chief of staff, I think.
Right.
In Congress, wrote something saying that the NCAA will not allow professionals, to come into college sports, but Congress can strengthen our rules with legislation. Like, a rule's a rule, right? Well, why would you need your rules strengthened? That tells me they know they're vulnerable on all this stuff. And,
clearly
the NCAA has really, really had a rough go with things in court over the years. And now that there's all this money involved, you get into potentially restriction of trade areas, Sherman Act stuff, and they're going to have to just hope like hell that Congress helps them. And in some situations, like the NBA draft, the NBA is going to have to protect its draft, because if somebody challenges that withdrawal deadline, I'm probably getting a little bit granular here, but if somebody ever challenges the NCAA's withdrawal deadline, that rule was put in place 100% to benefit college basketball coaches. This was back in the old 5 and 8 rule days.
Yeah.
And it was 100% put out there because Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski and John Calipari wanted to know who was on their team in April. So instead of letting guys go all the way up to the NBA draft, the NCAA put in this just arbitrary date that said you have to, or get off the pot by this date. And that was 100% self-serving for its coaches. And if somebody ever just remitted their NCAA eligibility and then went back and challenged that deadline as an arbitrary date just randomly picked to the benefit of college basketball coaches and not the people it really affected, that's going to get thrown out. And then the NBA is going to have to do something to make sure that its draft doesn't become a kiddie pool for Amari Baileys who just want to get drafted and see what happens, or somebody who wants to see where they get drafted and then decide whether or not to sign or not, knowing they could go back to college to make a couple of $1 million in revenue sharing money and or NIL. They're not the same thing. But it is just I don't think anybody wants to see like 25-year-olds playing college basketball, 26-year-olds playing college basketball. I just don't think that's what appeals to people about college sports. Coaches, however, have multi-million-dollar contracts, right? Their goal in life is to protect those contracts, protect their money, and to win. And when you put highly competitive people at odds with one another, with millions and millions of dollars at stake, they are going to do anything and everything. You're seeing that in the SEC right now. You saw that at Baylor when they found a loophole. They were able to navigate all of these precedents, all these rules. There is no rule that says James Najee could come back and play college basketball. There was a series of interpretations of rules that Baylor had to snake its way around to gain the NCAA into granting this guy eligibility. And once that happened, all of a sudden Alabama's rifling through the rule book to look for ways to get Charles Bediako on the court, found a court that would allow him in their state to play. And now that's back in court. So we'll see what happens there. But it is just, these coaches cannot help themselves. If there's anybody responsible for all of this, if they could just show some freaking restraint for once in their lives, you would not have NBA players, NBA draft picks, potentially one day NBA players playing college basketball. If the coaches would just control themselves and stop trying to one-up each other with loopholery and trying to find every competitive advantage possible, none of this would be happening. And they do have to find a way to get to 4 or 5 years, a hard deadline of 4 or 5 years of eligibility. They have never wanted a waiver process, which is fine. It's fine, whatever. So they wanted to make football and basketball consistent with baseball and some other sports in terms of transferring and whatnot. And I don't know why you couldn't have just gone the other way, but that's above my pay grade. But they just have made a complete mess of this, and they have established precedents, and they have created this unenforceable structure that is just sitting there waiting to get picked apart by lawyers and agents. And with money out in the open, everybody's looking for a way to expand the opportunities for their guys, not to get an education, not to play college basketball for the love of college basketball, but to make that revenue sharing and NIL money. And that's America. But also, if they want this to remain, the college sports that have gotten to this point of success and lucrativeness, profitability, the NCAA has always done an unbelievable job taking a knife to the throat of the golden goose. And that right now that they've completely lost all control over their organization, over the entire entity. And how that gets put back in the bottle, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a thing. The one thing, and last comment really is, you're going to have to work with the NFL. You're going to have to work with the Major League Baseball, the NBA, to have some understanding of what you're going to allow and talk to one another. It may be past that, I don't know, but it is messy and to say the least.
Well, this isn't the NFL's problem. This isn't this isn't the NBA's problem. It becomes the NBA's problem if all of a sudden the chaos that the NCAA has allowed college basketball to come, if all of a sudden now you have all of these kids declaring for the draft just to see what happens.
Yeah.
If they're able to get rid of that arbitrary NCAA withdrawal deadline, that's when it becomes the NBA's problem, because you need a draft that is exclusively for guys who are 100% committed to being in that draft. You cannot have guys with 1 foot in, 1 foot out, trying to maintain options in one arena while they pursue another. That's where it becomes the NBA's problem. And that's where the NBA would have to step in and not necessarily help the NCAA out of goodwill, but protect itself. And as I said before, this hasn't gotten yet to football. And as soon as the James Najee thing happened at Baylor, I guarantee you there were recruiting offices in college football facilities all over the country looking at last year's combine outcomes.
Yeah.
And looking at last year's training camp cuts to see how many underclassmen didn't make teams, didn't sign contracts, and might still be out there. That's coming. Like if
guaranteed.
If you think college basketball coaches are creative and backstabbing, you wait to see what college football coaches can do with this, because there's probably an offensive tackle out there who got hurt in training camp, after declaring after his junior year, who might have a year of eligibility left, who, because he got cut, he didn't sign an NFL contract, who's got a year of eligibility left, and he might just be sitting on his couch somewhere. And if you can find him and you can sign him and you can get him in shape, there's precedent out there now where you can make a case to get this guy eligible. It doesn't matter how old he is, right? It doesn't matter how much.
No age restriction.
It doesn't matter he went to the combine, because the NBA guys have been to the combine. But if they didn't sign a contract, then by the NCAA standards, they're good. Which, if you played summer league, I'm sure there's some sort of agreement that you adhered to there. But apparently that's not, written in stone or anything like that. But there are more loopholes here to be explored. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's like, come spring, let's just shut down the whole endeavor for 2 months and just rewrite the rule book, or what. But college basketball in particular needs to figure this out.
Yeah. And we were looking for you for all the answers here, and you've certainly put what the issues are. It's the answers are the hard things, and that's for certain. Brian, thanks so much. Always enlightening and good conversation, and we appreciate that very much. Look for Brian's coverage of not only Purdue, Oregon, but he'll be on the road. Watch for his postcards also on YouTube, as well as he heads to Nebraska. What a great time to go to Omaha next week, and then your another favorite place of travel, driving to Iowa City. Hopefully, the weather will work well with you. It hasn't always in Nebraska, I know that. So, safe travels next week, and we'll look for your work.
Thanks, Tom.
Fun time to be seated where you sit, which is about 2 feet from Matt Painter during the basketball games, and being able to cover, not only cover but broadcast. What is a challenging season? They all are, but what a run! He's been doing this thing since the COVID year of 2020-21. Purdue's been pretty good over those years.
Hey, Alan, thanks for having me. And yeah, we sure have. It's a question I get a lot with my position as the radio analyst with Purdue. Just going around town and things of that nature with my other parents, with my kids' school. I get that question all the time, like, hey, do you enjoy doing what you get to do? Do you have fun being the radio analyst? And I'm always just, have that answer of, yeah, I really get to enjoy it. And I'm spoiled because, like you said, ever since I've been doing it, Purdue's just been flooded with All-Americans and successful seasons, going to the NCAA tournament every year I've been doing it. So, and of course, a Final Four run in 2024. And yeah, I'm extremely spoiled. I'm sure there's other radio networks where they don't get to have nearly as much fun as Purdue does, and we get to, Rob Blackman, Wes Scott, and myself. We get spoiled rotten by Coach Painter and this Purdue program that just year in and year out has tremendous talent and does a lot of winning. And we get a pretty good seat courtside for a lot of the games to be able to watch that terrific team play night in and night out. So definitely love this little side gig I get to have and feel like I'm a part of the program again. And, that's kind of that main thing I think a lot of guys feel when they, their playing days are over and they move on. They miss that camaraderie that you feel like when you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And even though we're not officially on staff, we get to a lot of behind the scenes stuff and get to travel with the team. So we're about as close to being on the staff as you can to not being on it. So we get a lot of unique angles and perspectives, and it kind of, fills that missing piece for me from like a camaraderie standpoint. So really happy to get the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think you're also, and this is not to gush, but these guys that you get to be around are really good people. I mean, they're fun people to be around. We've talked many times, Matt Painter. It doesn't get, Purdue fans don't always realize that. They should, but this is a staff that treats people right. Win or lose, they know how to do it, and they win a lot. That's all great, but these are fun people to be around, from Matt Painter to Brandon Brantley to Elliot Bloom, on all the way down the line. You can't find much of a better situation. And working with a broadcaster of the year, and Rob Blackman, to talk about that. And Rob also has worked his way. Started with Purdue Radio about the time you were playing in one form. I used to do a post-game call-in football show with Rob, but he's moved on to many, many other things. But talk about the work with Rob and how you've been able to assimilate. You guys kind of, with Larry Clisby and that legend there, you've worked yourself into your own broadcast, but Rob's a good guy to work with, I assume.
Yeah, Rob's phenomenal, and that was really cool to see him get that honor to be Indiana Broadcaster of the Year. Well deserved. He's got his hand in a number of different things, with IndyCar Radio and the Purdue football pre and post, does some high school stuff. But of course, I think Purdue basketball is probably his biggest passion. And he definitely does a phenomenal job. And like to your point about just the staff and the great guys, Rob Blackman, Wes Scott, two guys that were on the radio broadcast team when I was a player, both tremendous guys, both really fun to be around. Coach Painter, Elliot Bloom, Nick Taruso, Paul Lusk, those were four of those kind of main staffers that were all on staff when I was a player. So just all the connections from even my early days, or Coach Painter's early days and my playing days, to now, just that continuity, everybody, pulling the rope in the same direction, and just all, like you said, really good dudes. And I think it just makes it for such a fun environment and such a great culture to be around, whether, during good times and bad times, right? Like we just went through a 3-game losing streak. Times are tough, but that you have a lot of great people in that room trying to get things on the right track. And that started out with that nice win at Maryland. And thankfully I get the chance to call these games with Rob Blackman, a guy who, he had huge shoes to fill, right? You're coming for a guy in Larry Clisby, an all-time legend. We still get to see Larry on the Jumbotron as part of that intro video. Whose house, our house. Love seeing that tribute to Larry. He's got a banner up in the rafters, and rightfully so. A lot of my childhood memories. The first team I really remember was that 1993-94 Glenn Robinson team when he was named National Player of the Year. They made the Elite Eight, won the Big Ten. That was kind of my first real team that I remember the ins and outs of. And a big reason of that is there was a championship video that they made of that team that was they sold on VHS, and Larry Clisby narrates that entire video. And I'm sure I heard Larry on the radio, driving around in the car with my dad and things of that nature too. But that video and that team really made me fall in love with Purdue, because I probably watched that video, God knows how many times. And Matt Waddell, and that was the reason I wore number 11 at Purdue, was because I was a big Waddell fan. And Conzo Martin, of course, who was my coach for 3 years at Purdue, was a big piece of that team. And the big dog were kind of the three-headed monster, along with Coach Brantley and a number of others who played big roles in that team. So, Larry, such fond memories of him. And Rob Blackman's done a tremendous job. Every game he gives a shout out and kind of a tribute to Larry Clisby by the first 3-pointer that's made by a Purdue player. He says bullseye in kind of honor of Larry Clisby. And then he transitions to the triple times after that. Yeah. But I really enjoy it. We have a lot of fun together. We try to make the broadcast fun to the best we can. We know it's a serious deal, obviously, but we try to mix in some comedy. I don't know how funny it is to others, but we try to have some fun from time to time. And it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is, and it comes off pretty organically. Tell me something about Rob that what makes him good. What when you have a guy like that has been doing this for a long time, and the pride of North White High School and all that, having that opportunity to be able to get to the level that he's at. What do you think is his secret sauce in terms of what makes him good at what he does?
Ooh, yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely a number of things that come to mind. I would say first is preparation. He does a tremendous job with his preparation. He's got, a long laundry list of things that he puts together for every game, going over the rosters, going over talking points. Because he prepares pretty much all the talking points for the pregame show. It's an hour-long pregame show. I know some other teams maybe just have like 30 minutes or so. So his preparation is phenomenal. Puts in the time, puts in the work. Always knows the opposition inside and out, and knows the key things going on with our Purdue team for that particular game. And then I think his passion for Purdue University, right? His passion and enthusiasm for the basketball program. He's been around it now for a long time. We talked about it. Yeah, his first year on the broadcast team was my freshman year, so back in 05-06. So he's just been around this program. He's got all these relationships. He's done a podcast with Elliott Bloom. He's now him and Joey Molinaro doing that Purdue Sports Athletics podcast. He just, I think, bleeds black and gold at this point. Even though he didn't attend Purdue University, I think at this point he's an honorary Boiler from that vantage point, and he bleeds black and gold. So I think his passion and enthusiasm for the team comes out in the broadcast. And then, just also the enthusiasm that he broadcasts with, the energy level. I think that's something that obviously a lot of, if you're listening to the broadcast and it doesn't sound like we're having fun, then it's probably not going to be as fun to listen to. And I think Rob does a good job of making our broadcast fun by his enthusiasm.
Yeah, I don't think it comes out. It doesn't take long, and you could always tell when Larry was doing games just how Purdue was, and that could get.
That's true.
He could wear it out in his voice. Rob is a little harder to tell because he just he there's obviously comments and things aren't going well. But the thing is, over the last period of time, things have gone pretty well.
Right. It's pretty rare we've had a broadcast where we're like, man, Purdue's just down and out. We have nothing going for us. There's been a
second half
couple
against Iowa State, maybe.
Second half against Iowa State. I know for a fact, I try not to do this, but I guarantee it happens. His color analyst, Rob's color analyst, definitely gets a lot more quiet when Purdue's not playing well. You hear much less of myself because I think a lot of times I'm just sitting there bummed out. But fortunately for us, we've had a lot of positive things.
All right, little technical difficulties brought on by yours truly, but we're back to our third time we're asking a question about Lance Jones and Bobby Riddell, talking about interjecting humor and humor into this interview, but also with respect to Lance Jones and the fact that, and as I said, I credit Brian Neubert. I'm sure others have talked about it. You saw it firsthand. A guy that came in and did the Lance dance. He made plays too. He was a terrific player. It's not a concern. It's just different guys are different personalities. And the 2026 team had pressure on it, certainly, when you're a preseason number one and all that. And I'm not saying that they're not having fun out there. It was fun in Maryland, and Fletcher Lawyer brings that when he's making shots. But talk about that chemistry and that importance of, just staying focused on the task at hand, but also, like you in the broadcast booth, it's fun to do this. And Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and TKR would admit the same thing, but just showing that joy and keeping that in perspective as Purdue has that challenging few weeks down the stretch.
You're right. I think that's a great question and a great thing to bring out about, Lance Jones and just what he meant to that 2024 team. Just the way he was able to play with that enthusiasm was really contagious, right? Like the way his mannerisms, the energy, the joy, I think that brought the best out in, his backcourt mates and Braden and Fletch and other guys on the team too. And you're right. He did so many things, whether that's the Lance dance or, just his smiling and things of that nature, his charisma. It was great. And I think the team needed that and they fed off that. And I think this year's team probably could use some of that from time to time. This year's team just has a lot of those kind of more mild-mannered guys. And, that is going to be an interesting thing that this team kind of has to deal with as they move along. Can they find that joy And like you said, I think they all have fun playing, but they maybe don't necessarily always show it that way. And so maybe it's not as contagious sometimes to others. But you're right. This team had so much high expectations coming in, the pressure of that, maybe we'll see kind of moving forward after that losing streak, some of that pressure goes away a little bit of like, hey, we got to win every single game. And now maybe these guys can kind of play more free and have some more fun and maybe show that. And that way it can be more infectious throughout the rest of the group. And like you said, the way Fletcher played the other night, it's hard not to have fun when the shots are going in, right? And a guy like Fletch, I think he is kind of probably –
he plays the crowd.
Yeah, I would say he's probably the most emotional leader of the team right now, certainly the most vocal of that senior class. And, he was really scuffling, right? He was really going through it in January, really struggled to shoot the basketball. So obviously if Fletch is not making shots and playing at a high level, like he's not going to be as joyful as he would like to be. And so I think a lot of the team was able to feed off his success. And so, yeah, he feels like kind of an X factor for Purdue. When he plays well, Purdue really often plays well and wins. And, they're 21-0 now when he makes 4 threes or more in a game. So, yeah, he's a big X factor for this team. Braden and Trey are the 2 best players, but Fletch is definitely going to be somebody to watch. And we got other guys who certainly can step up game in and game out, but it feels like when Fletch is rolling, the Boilers are rolling. And, we got this game here with Oregon coming up.
Yeah.
Certainly feels like an extremely winnable game on paper based on their struggles and their injuries. But then then it really gets real, right? That 6-game stretch coming up after that, all against top. I think I saw this morning Ohio State's 41st in KenPom, and that would be the worst team. That's the final game of that 6-game stretch at Ohio State. And they would be the worst team in the net. I think, 41st in the net. So they'd be the worst team in the net of that 6-team group that we play over the 6-game stretch. So 6 games against top 41 teams, 3 on the road, going to be an extremely difficult stretch and kind of one of those, not a make or break for the season, obviously, because, Purdue's going to make the NCAA tournament and still going to have a chance to do amazing things in March, regardless of how this goes, but certainly a make or break stretch regarding your Big Ten title aspirations and going to have huge implications regarding what sort of seed you're able to get in the NCAA tournament on how that stretch goes. And Purdue's obviously going to want to win all 6 of those games, and we'll be fully capable of doing that. But, from just a broader standpoint, if you're able to come out of that 5-1, 4-2, something of that nature, you would at least be pleased from that vantage point to come out with the winning record, because it's going to be an extremely difficult stretch.
Yeah, I think it was your senior year you won the Big Ten tournament, right? Is that
Yep.
right? So in 2009, and that is going to be an unbelievable event. Maybe you have not a lot, may have some seeding on the line, maybe not a lot of it. But, I would argue that Illinois has to lose to Michigan State on Saturday night, or Illinois you look at that schedule for the regular season is going to be darn hard for Purdue to catch them, I should say that. Even if Purdue goes undefeated. And that is a tall task for Purdue and for everybody. I mean, the league is just, especially the top 4 teams, I'll throw Nebraska in there, is just it's a gauntlet that you want to have it that way in a lot of ways because that mimics the NCAA tournament, but that's what the league is.
Yeah, the league's great this year. The top portion is phenomenal. Those 5 teams. Michigan State, slipped up the other night at Minnesota, but it does feel like those 5 teams for the most part have separated themselves. And it feels like that kind of top group is better than it's been in recent years as far as like, if any of those 5 teams made their way to the Final Four, I don't think people would be stunned by any means. And it's fun that way, right? The Big Ten tournament, like you said, should be really cool. And plenty of other teams kind of in that tier just below it that could make some noise and have talent. So, Illinois, them having a 2-game lead on Purdue, no more head-to-head matchups, so you don't control your own destiny against them at all, certainly isn't ideal. Trying to catch them, they're playing at a high level, really good team. But, they start there. They start a similar, really difficult 6-game stretch with this game against Michigan State where they play 3 on the road, the 1 at Michigan State, and then they go to UCLA and USC for their West Coast trip.
Which they could lose. I mean, that's possible.
So I think all 6 of the teams they play, I saw, are top 47 in the net.
Yeah.
So they definitely, could go 3-3 or something, and like definitely have a tough stretch going out west. The time change, things can happen, and things they could definitely slip up too. But Keaton Wagler, maybe a freshman wall gets hit or something along those lines. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen the way he's been playing, but they could slip up. So there's no doubt. But the problem for Purdue is it's not like even if they did slip up, it's not like we have this super easy stretch we're going through that we could make up some ground unless we play at a high level through our own difficult stretch. So hopefully we're able to do that.
I want to get your opinion on Braden Smith, number 3, and the fact that it's hard to imagine. I mean, Purdue's 4-year seniors and take TKR would be 5 years. Going to be hard to say goodbye to those guys. Wisconsin game on March the 7th, but put him in a little bit in perspective. You obviously played that position and watch it from a guard's perspective. I don't know if there's anything new to say about Braden Smith. He's been so unbelievable, and he's lived up to, whether he makes consensus first team All-American this year. There's so many good players. You never know, but I don't know how he's not going to. He's played at that level. But give us your perspective on what that career, you've watched it all from a stone's throw away, and how good he's been. It's just hard to even put into words, at least for me.
I'm with you. Braden, it's hard not to gush about Braden and his abilities and his career so far to this point at Purdue. Just been a phenomenal player, the best point guard I've ever seen play at Purdue, certainly with my own 2 eyes, and one of the best Big Ten point guards of all time. Certainly, I think he's going to go down. And a lot of it, depends on how his NBA career is going to go, but sure. I think at least from a college standpoint, we'll go down, in the likes of guys with like Isaiah Thomas and Magic Johnson, Cassius Winston, some of those great all-time point guards in Big Ten history. His name's going to be thrown in that group, and it's been a joy to watch him up close and personal. As someone who played some point guard at Purdue as well, like it's just some of the plays that he makes, I'm just blown away, because I wouldn't even, like in my wildest dreams, even attempted some of the plays he makes, let alone attempt and pull off. And he just has such unique capability to manipulate the defense with his ability to, make plays off the dribble, and his ability to shoot the basketball off the dribble also makes him so dynamic, because teams have to honor that, and that allows him to, then get by and break down defenses. And he jumps in the air and makes a lot of amazing plays, and it's kind of counterintuitive to what a lot of coaches would talk about. Leaving your feet a lot of times is major no-no from a ball handling standpoint, but he's actually probably creates more advantages for Purdue by doing so than disadvantages, which is just a testament to how creative he is and how good he is. He often at times, I think, creates passing angles for himself by leaving his feet that wouldn't be available to him if he stayed on the ground. And it's not 100% foolproof. He does at times make mistakes by doing that. And I know the coaching staff would like, sometimes to see him play off 2 feet and jump stop and things of that nature more often. But I think he kind of rides that difficult balance of being under control, playing off 2 feet a good amount, but also making that splash play that he can make by leaving his feet and creating angles that aren't there to him if he doesn't. So just an unbelievable player, 3 levels. His ability to make those kind of fall away mid-range shots that would be super low percentage for most normal players are high percentage shots for him. And that's why I just think he's, the NBA game is a lot different than college. We know that. And he's obviously got some, limitations, physically from a stature standpoint, but he's got a great wingspan. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal NBA player. I just think his passing ability, his ability to shoot, I think he'll be able to shoot the NBA 3 no problem. And think about him with like 4 other NBA players on the floor with him at all times. Like, I just think about how much advantages he's going to be able to create for those guys with his passing ability. And I think defensively, certainly he's never going to be a star, you wouldn't think, at that level from a defensive standpoint, but I think he can do enough defensively not to just be getting picked on time after time. Yeah. And time will tell. Certainly going to the right situation, going to a place that's going to be able to give him an opportunity is going to be important. Going to a coach that believes in his abilities and all those sorts of things will be huge for him, just because he's not going to be someone probably who's like just picked in the lottery and is handed opportunity right away unless he earns it. So that's going to be fascinating to see. But man, for the next couple months, we still get to see him in black and gold, and I'm thankful for that. And I hope he kind of gets that Cinderella story and is able to not only break the all-time assist record, but take Purdue to a national championship in Indianapolis. And man, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, no doubt. And he is I don't think you ever want to tell Braden Smith he can't do something, because that's just not in his deal. And I'm with you on the right situation. He's got Steve Nash, Chris Paul type qualities. No doubt. Those guys better than I do, but I'm not saying he's going to be Steve Nash or Chris Paul. I'm not saying that necessarily. Everybody wants to compare him to TJ McConnell. Sure, but
right. Some similarities there too, but
there's similarities too. But all right, and I one last question. Obviously, a little bit of news yesterday on Oscar on Thursday on I don't know if it's news or just a discussion on Oscar Clough and potential another year of eligibility, depending on a number of things. What the court, and this is the sad thing, it's not a basketball court ruling, it's the court rulings or whatever ends up happening with eligibility in the NCAA. Who knows? Bob Riddell may come back for a sixth year or fifth year. That would be just perfect. But just the dynamics of what Oscar's brought, it'd be great to have. But this is not a program, assuming everybody comes back, that's going to have a bare cupboard, so to speak. Whether Clough has the opportunity to come back, but this is going to have there's still a good roster of really good players coming back for 26, 27.
Yeah, the Oscar situation, definitely interesting one to monitor, right? The assumption was this was going to be his last year. I think they decided that players who played 2 years of JUCO were going to be granted one additional year of eligibility for that time period. But it seems that some other, individuals that were given that opportunity are challenging that and maybe wanting to get, for the 2 years of JUCO, wanting to get 2 years of eligibility back. And there's some football players that are challenging that right now. And so if it gets determined that for both years of JUCO you get 2 years of NCAA eligibility, I think that would obviously then be a sign for Oscar that would get the same thing. And then the question would be just whether Oscar wants to stay in school for another year. And if he does, will he stay at Purdue? And I think all indications are there would be a strong chance of that happening if he is granted that additional year of eligibility. Because I think Purdue, if Oscar did move on, Purdue would be certainly looking for a front court player to fill his void to some degree. They got some other internal options with Raleigh Burgess coming off redshirt. Daniel Jacobson would return. So you would have some other options, but you would think they would like to probably get another veteran presence in there if Oscar can't return. But man, wouldn't it be nice just to be able to check that box by just bringing Oscar back? We've seen, what he brings to the table, especially with the fact that you'd be losing Traycoff and Wren, having a bona fide back to the basket, low post option who can score with either hand, who's a willing passer, can draw double teams and kick out. That would be a huge piece to bring back a guy who's a great rebounder, because you're going to lose so much of that offensive punch with Braden, Fletch, and Trey walking out that door. So to have someone who's familiar with the system, the staff knows his strengths and weaknesses and everything he brings to the table, that would really help the transition to that kind of next team for next year. And like you said, still lots of talent coming back, a lot of great freshmen coming in. Sinan Wan, that would be another option in the front court coming in. Looks like a tremendous prospect, but I think having grown men certainly always really helps in today's. We saw what Indiana football was able to do with all those grown men on their roster, and so just having that veteran team and veteran experience and guys in there, 22, 23, 24. It certainly, you can't have enough of those guys in today's college sports.
All right, that is the new world of college sports, and we're all adjusting to it. But look for Bobby's work on the Purdue Radio Network. I always love the fact on these road games when you got to go in and record your interview in the locker room. It's not quite the same setup as it is in games in Mackey, but you do a great job with that. Have a good sense, even though Matt Painter's gracious in any situation. you still do a good job of knowing when to keep it short or keep it. I think I listened to your Indiana
like
one.
at Indiana. You mean?
Yeah, you knew that the coach wasn't real happy, and yet he's great. He could be better for
he's
Matt Painter. He's so
phenomenal.
good. But anyway, we'll look for Bob's
after losses.
work.
I like to keep it at two question max after losses.
Well, and those of you those that are listening, I said, man, keep going, man. But I get it, and I totally get it. And you guys got to get on the plane going back. You got a number of factors.
And he's got to get to his other bigger media responsibilities typically.
Yeah, and
so I don't like to keep him waiting too long.
Yeah, you do a great job with that. And like as I said, look for Bob and Rob's work and the great Wes Scott too. We love Wes, but on the Purdue Radio Network throughout, it's always fun when you win, but these guys do a great job of covering Purdue basketball, and Bobby Riddell has lived it, and that's important too. Bob, have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for taking your time with us and some of our challenges today. We got through it. So as far as we know, and
yes,
that's always good as well. So and we'll be back in a couple minutes, and we will have Dick Satterfield and Mike Steele, guys I'm sure Bob has met over the years that we'll talk a little Purdue basketball as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob.
Joined by Mike Steele and Dick Satterfield, and it's in their contracts. I have to introduce who they are. We've been on our show at least once a year, if not twice a year. And I know also Mike Steele's working hard negotiating not only NIL, but who gets the first. It's the Sat and Steele show in my view. I think it flows better. But we should be Sat and Steely because everybody calls Mike Steele Steely of his colleagues. But anyway, that's an introduction. Of course, key members of the 1974 NIT championship team. They had their moments in the Garden, both of them, and other moments. And also key observers in Mackey Arena a lot, if not glued to the television. Mike Steele has been a head coach at the Division I level. Dick Satterfield knows basketball like few others. And we appreciate them joining us. All right, Mike, I'm going to start with you. Again, Purdue's lot in life. Everything looks better, as Matt Painter says, game in and game out when you shoot the ball better. But last Sunday against Maryland, Purdue looked like a little different basketball team. The energy level seemed good defensively. Is that the key to this team getting to where it wants to get to come late March, early April?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I mean, Fletch is such a good guy and such a good teammate. And, I thought it was interesting, like, you watch when you've been a coach, one of the things I always watch is the guys on the bench, see how they react. And our bench, Purdue's bench is always great. Yeah. But when lawyers started making shots, I mean, they kept going to the bench, and it was really neat. It was like watching the players reacted like it was his brother or his son making the shots. I mean, they were so excited, and so was I. Was I, because I think that when went through this slump, talking to some of the players, and they said that he never changed. He was still worried about doing the right things for the teammates, doing the right things in the locker room. They all listened to him, but he never kind of went in kept. You would think, I'm sure he was thinking about a shot, and probably that didn't help. But I just think that he's had a great career, and he's had it. And I would love to see. And Sat, you and I remember, like, Carson Edwards had his last 4 or 5 games of the season, and when he played, I kept telling Payne, "You got to bench him. You got to bench 2019. Him." Yeah, horrible. And then in the tournament, as he averaged about 35 points, Payne said, "You need to just stay in your lane and keep giving me Netflix, because that's I hope if he shoots like that, it changes the whole, because other guys can really shoot it, but he's a guy that can, get 25 and a half if he's on. And so, I'm happy for him.
Dick, you look at you guys they barely had telephones back when you guys played, but they definitely didn't have social media. And I feel tough about it's always been tough on you want guys to tune stuff out. Mainly Fletcher Lawyer and others. Purdue's fan base is really supportive it is a great fan base, but there's still there's so much angst with this team. And yet, like Mike said, this is a great group of guys that plays hard. Yes, we'll talk about the first half against Indiana, but how do you look at this and say, this is a cohesive group. You guys have played at the highest level as well. What's it going to take for this group to get to where it wants to get to?
Well, they are 18-4.
Yeah, I know.
And their 4 losses have been to pretty good teams. I think what it's going to take for them to get there is, we've seen this team against Texas Tech, Wisconsin, Maryland, Auburn. And when they had that combination of good defense and shoot well, they're awfully tough to beat. But they're, as Coach Painter has said, they're going to have at least one game where they don't shoot well in the tournament. So we're going to have to see that defense. And, the kids are they're not great one-on-one defensive players, but he's got a really good scheme. But that's going to be the key is how we can stop other people. And, these long wings really cause us problems.
Yeah, and it is 3-point defense, 2-point defense in that 3-game losing streak. But like you said, and Mike, these are not all 3 of those games were against really good basketball teams. Indiana was frustrating, I think, from a Purdue perspective, just because, and we hit on this before we started recording, and that being that West Coast tour, and coming back from that. You don't ever want to make excuses for going to Indiana and not playing well, but Purdue just didn't have any energy in the first half. I don't think we're going to see that again throughout the course of this season. What say you, Mike?
Oh, I don't think so either. And I think that, and every game in the Big Ten, as it showed last night with Michigan State, every game, if you're on the road, it's a tough deal. And there are so many. I mean, between us and the Big 12, we've got half of the teams in the top 20.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's, Illinois is incredibly hot right now. Michigan's went in and beat Michigan State, enough said there. But you also have Ohio State that they've won 13 or 14 games. Iowa's at 14 or 15. All those teams just below us are fighting to try to get in the NCAA tournament. So every game they play is like a tournament game. So, going to Iowa, like you said, going to Ohio State, I mean, those are going to be tough. They're going to be tough games.
Not to mention Nebraska next Tuesday on down the line. It's all there for Purdue, Dick, in terms of, and even Matt, I don't think has kind of hinted a couple of times, Coach Matt Painter, about if we just win our games, we're going to be right there. And I think he's not trying to take too big of a bite of the apple, so to speak. But this is, it is reality. I mean, Purdue's got the schedule still plays out. And as Mike said, you never want to count wins in this league. But if you can somehow find a way to get your next 3, and that's not going to be easy, obviously, with Nebraska and Iowa on the road and Oregon on home on Saturday. But the point is, Purdue's as good as anybody in this league. Do you agree with that? I mean, in terms of just about maybe not Illinois and Michigan, but they're not far behind. And we saw that even when Illinois came to West Lafayette.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Sat.
I think that we're as good as anybody. I'm not sure we're as good as Illinois.
Yeah.
They're awfully big. They're well coached. Having said that, obviously, they shot exceptionally well against us. And that's probably not going to happen all the time. Alan, one of the things that I wanted to say about this team, Raleigh Burgess is a kid from Cincinnati, and I know him I know a lot of the kids in the team, but I probably know him better than anybody. And before the season, he told me that this team was more locked in together than the team was even last year. And that's going to be really key as we move forward here, because Matt's right. And I sent a text to Elliot after we lost to Illinois, and I said, none of our dreams have really changed.
Yeah, that's right.
But we have no margin for error now.
Yeah. And that is a reality. Mike, we didn't mean to interrupt you, but what did you have a bit of wisdom here to add to that comment?
Well, I did, and I had my 72nd birthday 2 days ago, and so no, I have no idea. I have no idea what I was going to. I just say the same thing Sat said. I'll just say that.
Yeah. All right.
You know what, Sat? You know what's interesting though is that when we played, our sophomore year was the closest team that we had.
Right.
And David Luke, God bless him, he changed our team. He went from a guy that was never friendly to hardly anybody to being a guy that everybody wanted to be with. And when you were in for David, you could see he would be off the bench. He wasn't pouting, and that changed us. And from Bruce Rose, we had leadership, but then we had some great players with Park and Frank and John Garrett, but we were all really close, and that was the closest team, and that was the most successful team. And I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's interesting, Alan. I asked Raleigh, I said, Raleigh, why did you choose Purdue? Because he could have gone, I won't say he could have gone any place, but he could have gone almost any place. And he said, it's the team, it's the culture, it's the guys. And, he's right. I mean, my best friend is, he's on the screen here with me right now. Bruce Parkinson, and these are guys that, we went through everything together.
Yeah, Raleigh, and it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, Mike, go ahead.
No, and we've got Raleigh when I've seen practice this year, if he had not redshirted, he would be fighting for playing time because he's going to be really good. And the kid we got from Toledo, he might be the answer. He might be the answer to defensively being able to guard some people on the perimeter, and they just can't shoot right over you. I mean, I think that's the thing. We're in pretty good position on these, on defending the three, but we're just, Braden's just not, he's 6 foot at the best, and the other guy, I mean, they just are shooting over us. But they're making them too. I mean, God, we've had some stretches where guys, and guys are making shots on us with 1 second, 2 seconds on the shot clock, and they're always a three. So maybe we've had that in the past. Maybe we'll move forward here.
All right. Well, you guys both got to play. I mentioned his name, Bruce Parkinson, the greatest point guard in Purdue history, and Bruce would even admit this up till the guy that you see now, number 3. But I want you guys to both put, you've watched a lot of Braden Smith. We all have the last 4 years. Hard to believe it's coming to an end. But give me some eloquence on what you see from him that maybe not what everybody else sees, but just how good he is. And that's almost a silly question because he's done everything. But Dick, I'll let you give you the floor first. And when you think of him, what do you think of as you watch him play?
I think his court vision is just incredible. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the game on TV, and I can see things, of course, because the camera's up in the air. Yeah. But he sees him. He's down on the floor. It's incredible, his court vision. I think the other thing that really gets overlooked about him, though, is he is a terrific off-ball defender. He gets a lot of steals. Like, that game at USC, his anticipation, his court vision, his anticipation are two things that I absolutely cannot believe.
Yeah. Mike, what from a coaching perspective to all the basketball you've watched, there aren't many like him, and there won't be many like him. They'll be different, the guys that take over, whether it's Antoine West or Omer Meyer on down the road, but totally unique.
No, he's the best point guard I've ever seen. I mean, and Park was a great point guard. I mean, and Park was the best player that I played with. And that, that includes Seasteen, Macy, and, all those guys. He was the best all-around player. But Braden's better. I mean, Braden can shoot better than Park could shoot.
Yeah.
Braden could, he can come on, and he's got so much confidence in his shooting now. But to Sat's point, when you remember Sat when we played and you'd watch the film of Indiana and Quinn Buckner would be 20 feet away from his man, getting steals and causing problems. But those quick enough could get back. You wouldn't even think about it. Well, now Braden is starting to do that more, and he's really good at it. I mean, and I talked to Steve Clifford, who was the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, and he was here at East Carolina, and he's a good friend of mine. And he went to visit Painter or in the preseason. And I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and I said, we're just talking. I said, where do you think Braden will go in the draft? Or you think? And he said, well, Mike, you can forget reading anything about where guys are going, because the guys that put that out, have no idea what guys are really thinking. He said, but if Braden Smith goes somewhere where they're really good, he can make a team a championship team, because he's so unselfish and he throws lob passes. I'd love to send him right to San Antonio right after the season's over and let him, because
Victor.
And he's so tough. I mean, he's kind of a cross between Scott Skiles with a little bit of,
good point.
Me against the world, but he's also a great teammate. And I sent him a text 2 days ago, and I said, it was nice to have your wingman back. And he said, he says, we're going to need that down the road. I mean, it's like, we've been waiting for it. But you think about he and Lawyer, we've never seen a combo. I guess maybe Keller and
Mount.
Yeah, Keller and Mount, or Keller.
Yeah.
But these guys have started. My gosh, it's 4 years, and I think have they started every game together?
Yeah, every game.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is an unbelievable streak, but he is, as my phone decides it has to go off. It is. It just is truly unique and unprecedented, almost in Big Ten play. All right, Mike,
probably the greatest, but this is an interesting one, because my kids and I were talking about this. The question is, who's the greatest guards in the history of Purdue? Tandem. And, Mount and Keller did get to the finals of the NCAA. So did Fletcher and Braden. I think that story is still to be written, but I tell you one thing, they're both great kids. I mean, that's the one thing that's really underrated about what Coach Painter has done. He gets good kids.
Yeah. It's interesting too. And I was happened to be out at the USC game where he gets his knee knocked.
Yeah.
This kid, Braden Smith, played in I believe in the state championship game with a broken foot. You're going to have to cut his leg off if he's not going to play. He just is, and I don't know that he's even 100% off of that just yet, but it doesn't seem to matter. Not to mention his other little ankle issue, but it has been incredible to watch. I want to get your guys' opinion on Omer Meyer and Jack Benner, two guys that also, in my view, hold a key to. You got to have guys come in and make shots and do good things. Benner has been well documented, just comes in and does things. Just does little things, rebounds, doesn't turn the ball over, makes shots. Omer Meyer has been maybe a little bit up and down, but he's a really good player. Mike, I'll start with you. The key, what do you see from those guys and that role in that key game, whether it's Smith rolls an ankle for a few minutes and you need somebody to come in and do something, which we've seen already. But what do you like about these guys and their improvement so far this year?
Well, I think the first guy that is improved incredible amount is Cox. I mean, he has hit big shots. He's got no fear. I mean, he is really, really solid. And then when Harris comes in, Harris is a guy that can come in and guard, and he's also really improved. Both those guys have improved. And then to your question on Benner and Omar, Omar's different. He's not Smith, but he's good. He's really good. He's got good vision, and he can shoot it. And obviously Benner's the kind of guy that every year you probably think you're going to get a better player than him, more athletic and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's going to take a charge. He's going to feed the post. He's going to dive on the floor. He's going to guard. He's going to block out. Every team needs a guy like that. And he could be the guy for the next 3 years.
Yeah. Dick, what's your, when you watch those guys play, and they both have had their moments, and Benner really has been so consistent. That's what's been impressive about him. I mean, he's not made some shots here in the last 2 or 3 games. I get that, but he just comes in and does it. Omar's had some moments where he's struggled to score a little bit. Maybe that's true, but not of late. What do you like most about these guys, and how do they integrate into what Purdue's trying to get done down the stretch?
Well, I really like our bench. The one person we haven't talked about is Daniel Jacobson.
Yeah,
and he's really good. Played very well at Maryland, and he's going to be a key. Specifically, I really like Meyer. I mean, I just think he's fabulous. He's very different. Mike and I have talked a lot. His defense is very, very underrated. He's really stepped up, and he's playing good defense. But, we get a shot whenever he wants it. He's a good kid. Venter, I love watching Jack play. Now, Jack's nickname is Simulator Man, so people want to know why. So I'm a pretty avid golfer, as is Mike. And Jack is an avid golfer. And I said, Jack, are you any good? He said, well, I shot 69 on the simulator. I said, Jack, I'm not interested in what you shot on the simulator. I'm interested in what you shot on the course. But anyhow, I agree with everything Mike said. He's 6'6". He's a really good jumper. He plays really hard. He does all the little things right. He is a terrific, terrific player and is going to get nothing but better. And by the way, I agree, Mike. We don't talk much about CJ or Jakari either. But boy, look how much those guys have improved, and they are going to be critical down the stretch here.
Yeah, and because we can do this, and it's fun to look ahead, even though there's so much to play for the rest of this season. Bruce, Mike, and you've hit on it already. The cupboard is not bare, assuming everybody comes back. We always have to, and I know Mike Steele may come back for the next interview. It depends if we get his NIL deal worked out. But
you'll have to call my agent. Call my agent.
If everybody comes back next year, Purdue will be different, but Purdue will be really good.
Have you heard anything more about the possibility of Clough coming back?
I have not. I don't know if he's going to try to get to. I mean, now with eligibility where it is.
No,
what have you heard?
Well, he played 1 year at junior college, and now that doesn't count, that a lot of guys are obviously trying. It looks to me like if you're going to bring guys in from the NBA, you ought to be able to bring them in from the a year at junior college.
Yeah,
incredible.
So they'll be. What's interesting about Painter is he's now, he historically got guys that are kind of ranked 75 to 125. Obviously, there's outliers, Zach and Braden, but for the most part, that was his sweet spot. Well, now he's getting better players, right? And so he's got the same system. He's got better players. But what I really admire about him is he sticks to what he knows he wants. And I've asked him about it. I said, you don't ever get any 5 stars other than Biggie. He's never gotten a 5-star. He says, Dick, they're all 5 stars in my eyes. And his talent evaluation is unbelievable. And let's give Brad Underwood credit for getting that kid that was ranked pretty low too.
Yeah.
No. Oh yeah. Keaton Wheeler's, well, it was the greatest performance of a Purdue opponent in Mackey Arena ever, and the greatest performance by scoring wise in I think in the history of the Big Ten, right? 46 points. And he's still making it. Reminded me of Mike Steele out there shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had more points in one game than I had in my career. You know what, though? And you know what, Alan? It was kind of neat that I'm watching the game, and with about 10 minutes to go, I got texts from 3 former players at DePaul and 2 former players from East Carolina. And all of them said, Coach, when is somebody going to come in and knock that kid on his butt?
Yeah.
I go, well, things are different now. You got the technicals and you got the and ones and, you got to sit out a game or whatever. But yeah, if that kid, it was incredible, but boy, somebody needed to knock him down. That's my humble opinion. Man, that was something.
Dick, last word. And by the way, that Mike Steele's opinions are never humble. But Dick, what from that standpoint, your last word on what we're going to see down the stretch and with Purdue?
I think we're going to see a good Purdue. We've seen a really good Purdue. And I'm so proud to be a former player associated with this program. Matt Painter has done. That's the one thing about us. We're never going to get outcoached. Never.
Yeah.
And we got good guys. I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, nobody, when I've got a friend of mine that's assistant coach at Carolina, Jeff Lebo, and then Joe Dooley at Kansas and Carolina. And both of them have said, everybody's just trying to emulate what Purdue does. And when Carolina and Kansas say that, that's a pretty big deal.
Pretty big endorsement. All right, gentlemen. The meter's running. It's now ready to turn off, but we appreciate your time. Always insightful. Always kind of a good start to the day, that's for sure. And we'll look forward to seeing you in person, Michigan, Purdue, on the 17th of February, when you guys matriculate to the center of the universe, which is West Lafayette, Indiana. We'll look forward to that. Safe travels, Mike Steele. Get rid of all that snow in North Carolina. Has it melted yet?
Hey, this is beautiful. This is how our education system keeps us right just a little above Alabama. It snowed, and now it's gone. Yeah. But it rained a little bit last night, so they're worried about the ice, and it's 45 degrees today. So there's no school today or tomorrow. We've had no school the whole week.
Okay, wait. I'm going to go out and play some golf now.
All right. I'm going to let you go. And Dick, you're in Florida.
Yes, I'm in Key Largo.
And I know you had a little bit of cold last week, but yes, go out and shoot that age. You get both these guys celebrated birthdays, and Dick has shot his age many times, and hopefully he'll get a chance to do that.
Get easier.
I might get my age like on the 12th hole.
You're net. I'm gross. You're net.
All right, gentlemen, have a great rest of your day.
Alan, thanks, man.
Always enjoy, my friends. All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Want to thank our guests and Brian Neubert. We have a little bit longer simulcast today, GoldandBlack.com simulcast. Just a lot of good basketball talk again with Brian Neubert and, of course, Bobby Riddell talking about his broadcast position a lot more. And then, of course, Dick Satterfield and Mike Steele, always interesting. So we appreciate you staying up with us, so to speak, throughout today's GoldandBlack.com Saturday simulcast. For February 7th, we'll have another one for Valentine's Day next week, just the way you want to spend your Valentines. But we want to thank the Union Club Hotel, the Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro, also the great new Boiler House Prime at the Pete Dye Clubhouse, and the Pete Dye are in the Burke Boilermaker Golf Complex. Excellent place to enjoy a wonderful dinner there as well. And a reminder to all of you, and that is you can subscribe to us on YouTube. We would love to have you there. We would also, if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, don't forget to leave us a positive 5-star review. If you don't have one to give us, you can keep it to yourself, but we appreciate you on that platform. And even a better idea might be to become a member of GoldandBlack.com. You see and hear the work of Brian Neubert, Tom Dienhart, Dub Jellison, and all the work that gets put together. There's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great content on GoldandBlack.com. There are specials out there. If you're watching it on YouTube, there's two months for $1 out there. There are a lot of things that can get you started with us and join the biggest Purdue sports community on the internet. And we've been in business for a long time and on the internet for a long time, and we appreciate all the folks that have joined us. And it is a good place to know what's going on in the world of Purdue sports, et cetera. So have a great weekend. Stay warm, stay safe if you're traveling, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast.
Hey, it's Derek from Gold and Black Radio. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and you'll get up to a $1,500 new player offer on your first wager with BetMGM, plus 50% off an annual subscription to the On3 College Sports Network. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses, and your code for a 50% off an annual subscription to the On3 College Sports Network in your BetMGM inbox once your first bet is placed. Just make sure you use that bonus code On3 when you sign up. Make this sports season one for the history books. Make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel.